As the current director of the School of Education, I am pleased for this opportunity to just say a few words about our research program. And perhaps the matter of improvement of student learning is one that bears emphasis in talking about our research work, because one of the critical dimensions of our research work is to find ways of improving student learning and achievement. That, we believe, is essential for giving us the kind of manpower, the kind of basic raw material coming out of our school system, which will allow us to further educate and train our high school graduates to provide the manpower needs of these small island states. We need a particular kind of expertise to fuel our development, focusing on the assessment of the quality of education that we are providing and the accountability. How well are we doing with the resources provided from the public purse, and naturally seeking to make recommendations or find new ways of improving both quality and accountability in education.
Education expense for extra lessons is the third highest in our nation, right after transportation and lunches, but it has not yet been studied in an empirical way that looks at effects, impact values, the hows of extra lessons when it comes to the secondary level. At the primary level, there was a government report done, but at the secondary level, there hasn't been research at that level as yet. Research now shows that the structures in which our classrooms are set up in rows are not conducive to learning. So we know now as researchers, as educators, that the way we set up a classroom like that isn't conducive, because students constantly spoke about their motivation. They felt confident. They don't answer questions in their regular class, right? They feel ashamed. They feel that they're one of many. They're a number, so their voices are not heard. But when they're in extra lessons, they raise their hands. They're picked on constantly by the teacher. They are known. They have a name. And they feel more empowered. And so it was much more than their scholastic acumens that increased. It was also what is educational outcomes, the socialization of education, which is increased motivation, increased confidence levels. So my overarching recommendations were definitely divided into policy. It was divided into professional development for the teachers, for the students conducting this level of research continuously across the Caribbean, right? One of the main ones that I think would speak towards, if I could pick one, because it's a large study, would be that we change the conditions for learning in schools, right? We subsidize costs for students who need extra lessons, additional tutoring to master teachers for pay to help the master teachers, but the students who cannot pay to have them attend for free because it is necessary. This is not new stuff. This occurred back in 1995 with the same type of summer programs. And it has happened. Now, where accountability happens is in the training of these teachers, right? With master extra lessons teachers who have 2+ decades of doing this work and yielding sustainable higher outcomes when it comes to close to 75% distinctions. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
This particular piece of work came out of the evaluation of the national curriculum in mathematics, English language, English literature, And this was a study that we did across the school system. We did a sampling of primary and secondary schools, examining how the national curriculum in these areas were being implemented at the primary and the secondary level. So there are important questions about the sorts of strategies that teachers are using inside the classroom, the context in which teachers are operating, and the general outcomes from the curriculum. One of the things we saw coming out of the interviews, and was a recurrent theme with teachers and principals and parents, was teacher quality. That's an important consideration. Teacher quality as a crucial input in the production of education. And the idea, and we know that there is a direct relationship between teacher quality and outcomes. The research shows us that. Our own research shows that to us. We are therefore looking at that as an important consideration that would feed back into the way we train teachers, how we prepare them in the pre-service part of their training. What is it that they need to know in order to meet the needs of the students who they will meet now? An important issue that came out of the research also was that the context, the local context, whether it's rural, urban, or in the case of Jamaica, remote, rural, how that was shaping the way the curriculum was being delivered. And the question that arose from that was whether or not the curriculum is appropriate for all students in all these contexts, because the contexts are different. Children in the agricultural belt, in these remote rural areas, need something that is slightly different from the children who are in large urban schools. And so those are considerations that we now have to put into and be mindful of how we produce the educational product. If I was to bring it down to a single issue, we can't look at the curriculum as a discrete part of the education system. It's a continuous thing from early childhood into secondary education, and we need to look at it as such, as one broad thing that will take a child from pre-K to grade 13 and how we prepare them to be part of the society.
I was looking at teacher qualifications, years of service, in terms of linking that to teacher quality and the impact it has on student performance in mathematics and English language in CSEC examinations. The opportunity gap that we need to close. Jamaica has several different types of high schools, and traditionally we have gone through many changes. We have what we call traditional high schools, we have upgraded high schools, technical high schools, vocational schools, and so on. With the many types of high schools that we have, we thought that maybe what is happening is that in the different schools there will be teachers who are more qualified than others, and if that is so, to what extent that might be contributing to the opportunity gap, the gap that we're seeing in the performance of students on both of these exams, which are foundation exams, if you're going to move on to tertiary education, to to employment, and so on. So these are crucial examinations, and do we have qualified teachers teaching them in all our different types of schools? Although we call them all high schools, we know that there are quality issues. So we have access, but do we have equity? There was a serious mismatch between teacher's qualification and the subject he or she might be teaching. There were too many instances where we had, say, a home ec teacher teaching mathematics, or a woods teacher teaching English language, and so on. So we had those discrepancies. It was so in our traditional high school, but it was much more so in our upgraded high schools or technical high schools, where we found a significant number of the teachers teaching English language and mathematics were not qualified to teach those subjects. If we mean to seriously increase the pass rate in these subjects, we are going to have to upgrade our teachers, those who qualify to be upgraded. We're going to have to recruit young teachers or young teachers who wish to either switch or to be retrained. We also have to look at recruiting high school students who are doing their CAPE subjects and look at enticing them, encouraging them to come into the area and make sure that when we're hiring, that we look at the qualification of our teachers, we look at the years of experience, we look at the grades they might be teaching, because it doesn't mean that because you taught primary education that you are qualified to teach at the secondary level, and there are those misfits too. So we really need to look at teacher training and ensuring that in our hiring practices and so on, that we try to ensure that the right teacher is employed. If we don't have enough in the pool of teachers, then we have to go back to the drawing board as a country and train more teachers in these areas.
The focus of my study was identifying differences in the classroom, differences among teachers, teacher practices, right? So I wanted to identify how teacher practices differ in the classroom and how it impacts on how the teacher implement the curriculum. I used the psychological concept, teacher's locus of control. And let me quickly tell you what teacher's locus of control is. Teacher's locus of control measures teachers' perception of their personal control and responsibility for outcomes in the classroom, both behavioral and academic. External teachers put a lot of effort into their work, but they took responsibility only for the input. The internal teacher, yes, they put effort into their work, but they took responsibility for both input and output. And one recommendation from this is that teacher training institutions need to start helping teachers to uncover their personalities, to explore their personalities and to understand themselves and how their beliefs and thinking impact on their action. So that's one. Two is that because nonverbal feedback allowed for flexibility in the classroom, which is what we want in the classroom, I'd recommend that the training institutions include in their training a communication study helping teachers to decode nonverbal behavior.
In this study, we tried to integrate environmental issues in the math classes. Okay. So this was research that was funded by the Principal's Initiative. By doing this, students will become more aware of the environmental issues, the climate change issues, and the lack of water in this case. And we also look at other things like garbage, air pollution, and so on. We look at mostly graphs and data from the different countries. So the students learn about global issues, which is one of the themes, and climate change, which is the other theme. And then we also did the same in English, which is, and then we had a big fair at the end where the students come together at UE, and then to celebrate the achievement. So they had posters, artwork, and so on. We know that integration is one approach that teachers can use in their classrooms to teach issues. In fact, so environmental education is one issue. Research will show that how we can teach the School of Education and the teachers in Jamaica can teach environmental issues without any extra classes. The fact that they can integrate it in their math classes, in their English classes, in their science classes, so that will, for teachers, that's very important. So they don't, because they often complain they don't have enough time to do things. And secondly, for the students, I mean, in grades 1, 2, 3, we have this integrated approach, but suddenly we stop. So this way, we are using an integrated approach to teach different issues that's related to climate change in the regular classes.
We must show